So let's get underway. So yeah, today the editor that we're going to be using is called Slade. I know that Doom Builder here is sort of the de facto standard if you're editing Doom levels in Windows, and it is indeed quite good. It doesn't seem to be under very heavy development these days, like I guess the last news post was 2012, whereas Slade is still being worked on. I think like its map editor had a big release, yeah, last year after several years in development. Anyway, don't want to get too sidetracked on that. So, editing Doom levels. I'm going to go over some basics of just like what a Doom mod means, and then jump into some level editing. First thing you probably want to know is, like, if you've bought Doom on Steam or something, or I assume GOG or any other place that will sell you a legal copy of Doom, how do you use that with like a modern engine or with this editor that we've got here called Slade? And the answer to that is that if you go into the directory where, if you install Doom 1 or 2 or Final Doom in Steam or whatever, then you go into the directory where the files have been downloaded or extracted, whatever, and you'll see some files with a dot. You'll see one file with a .wad extension, and that is the iWad data file, and that's the thing that contains basically all of the game data. Like, Doom really is just its executable and the WAD file, and maybe like a config file in the old DOS version. Anyway, the one for the original Doom is called doom.wad, and the one for Doom 2 is doom2.wad. They will have date stamps sometime in 1996. So you can feel old. And yeah, so you copy that somewhere that Slade can find it. I'm not going to get into like the actual configuration thing here, but yeah, you just kind of point it to where your files are. If you're doing this in Windows, then it's probably your interface is probably going to look very different, but Slade should be the same. And yeah. So yeah, let's open up one of these files here. Let's open up doom2.wad. And Slade, in addition to having a map editor, the thing that it originally served the purpose of is just being able to, as a manager for these WAD files, where you can open up the resources in them and check them out and put in your own resources and create custom WADs. Like, let me just open up my own. Let me open up a WAD that I myself have created, just so you can see what a manageable amount of stuff. Yeah, so this is the thing for my Doom demake Arcadia. And yeah, there's some map data in here. There's always I actually included a palette swap here. I don't know why that's not showing up here, but yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why. Anyway, normally it will display palette data. But yeah, there's really like doom2.wad here. It contains, well, it contains a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff, not all of which is very relevant to what we're doing. But you can see it contains some map data here, and it contains some sound data. Oh, PC speaker data. Oh, cool. Slade doesn't like to play PC speaker sounds. Good to know. Yeah, and it's got little objects, little sprites. Like that's a HUD sprite that shows the different weapons that you have. This is old Doom's face, showing the different states of damage. And a little further in, we've got like monster graphics. There's an old Revenant firing a rocket launcher, and then further in, we've got level textures. Like these good old classic level textures. The level textures are kind of mainly all we care about today. That one right there is just a classic, the old face wall. Old wall 25. So yeah, so the iWad contains a whole bunch of stuff, and if you look at a... Oh, and it didn't remember that I had opened up Arcadia. So hopefully we won't trigger that crash again. And a typical like mod WAD will just contain a few things, like this is my skybox, my custom skybox, and this is just a custom waterfall texture that I wanted to include. There's actually these like text lumps that vanilla DOS Doom will not look at, but ZDoom will. ZDoom is a massively upgraded version of the Doom engine that is based on the open source release from 15 plus years ago. Anyway, I'm sick of talking about all this non-visual stuff here. So let's just jump in. I'm going to open up Doom 2 Map 1, which will probably be pretty familiar to you. We're going to open that up just kind of in a normal mode. So here we're looking at the level from a top-down perspective. This is actually very, very similar to what you would see if you just opened up this map in Doom and turned on the auto map with the level fully explored, mind you. So yeah, we're seeing the level from a top-down view, and because of how the Doom engine works, you can see everything about a level, basically, well, almost everything about a level in a top-down viewport, because it is a 2.5D engine, which in this case means that you can't have floors upon floors. Like, you can't have a room with its own floor and ceiling sitting on top of another room with its own floor and ceiling, at least without some really special tricks that kind of fall outside the purview of the normal engine. So, yeah, like, in the olden days, you would kind of have to edit your level entirely in this view, and you would, like, when you would go to pick a texture, you'd be like, I want this texture on this wall, and if you were lucky, then it would let you pick the textures visually, and if you weren't, you would just have to like type in the name and kind of remember it. Whereas nowadays, Slade and Doom Builder have really cool 3D previews. And here you see we can just fly around in this level like it isn't a big deal. And gosh, why is my CPU pegging here? Oh, probably because I'm encoding video. Anyway, how is the stream audio lag, etc., by the way? Are we doing okay there? I don't think there's going to be a tight audiovisual sync between stuff as if I was playing a game or something, but uh-oh. What did we do here? Let's remaximize this. So anyway, but it's really like this top-down view is still very useful, so it's a combination of these things that will do it. So I opened this up just so that you would kind of know what a level looks like, but let's get down to the sort of basic, to the four food groups of a Doom level here. So Slade, like most Doom editors you'll find, will have different modes for selecting the different sort of type, like parts of speech, if you will, with representing space. So like this thing that's lighting up when I hover over it, this thing that's lighting up yellow here, this is a sector, which really just means a room of negative space that the player can walk around in. So then I can switch into line mode, and now what's lighting up are the walls of those sectors, and they've got a little tick on them so you can see which direction the wall is facing. Sometimes a line def can face two different sides. Like here, for instance, we've got, we move the 3D camera here. So yeah, we're in this room, which is kind of complex and interesting. So like this wall right here only comes up so high, and we can see that here. It's got a tick that's facing outward. And when we look at this sector, so yeah, like, and then the actual, lastly, the things that have very little data to them are the vertices. The little dots here that define, you know, a line def is always connecting two different verts, and then a sector is made of multiple line defs, and then these guys called things, which represent enemies and pickups and player spawn locations, and a few special things. So yeah, between vertices, line defs, sectors, and things, that's really everything that a Doom level is made out of. And if you look back in the thing here, there's actually, like, when we look at this map data, we've got the map01, which is actually just sort of a marker, and then there's like, well, this has 690 bytes of thing data, some line def and side def data. There's like, this gets into some, you know, details of how levels are represented in the file format that aren't very important, but yeah, like the map really is just comprised of that. So if we wanted to make a new room in this level here, then we would just start drawing out a box, and see we're creating line defs here. It's got that tick mark sticking off the side. And then we create, once we've enclosed a polygon, then we've created a new room. And let's go over to this room here. So this is just a plain gray, boring room. And it's got kind of the default textures that Slade has decided are the things, and we can right-click on it and pick a texture. And then we can do the same thing. A thing about outdoor spaces in the Doom engine is that they are really just normal rooms like anything else, but they have a special ceiling texture on them called F-Sky. And so then, like, and yeah, Slade is giving us a 3D preview. This is not actually the Doom engine rendering this. Like, Slade has its own OpenGL renderer for Doom levels that, you know, just cares about representing the visible surfaces. So yeah, but it's done basically what you know, the Doom engine would do with this when we put the texture on here, which is drawn it with an open box. And then we can do likewise with the textures for the walls here. We can say, oh yeah, I want that texture. Slade has a really nice thing where I can mouse click on this and then shift middle mouse on that and kind of copy paste texture placements. We can go back into the level here and actually shift left click, and that selects all of these surfaces that have the same texture within a sector, which makes it very, very easy for us to just completely change out the entire room's texture look. So that's very cool. You didn't have any, if you were editing Doom levels back in the day, you wouldn't have had anything like this, and it's really nice. Because between, oh yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention that is very important about sectors is that they have a floor and ceiling height, which you can see represented off to the side in this, like when I've got this sector selected here, it says floor height 0, ceiling height 20. And in the Doom coordinate system, that's about what, and so then I can use the mouse wheel in 3D view and raise and lower the ceiling height. Just if I'm pointing at a wall, I can raise and lower the ceiling height, and that's awesome. Then I can also raise and lower the floor height if I'm looking at the floor. And so you can very easily make, like, making this kind of shape, you know, if I wanted to just get rid of this little, I always called this thing the Star Destroyer, this thing that you're always looking at when you start up map 1 in Doom 2. So yeah, I'm just tweaking floor heights here, and now I have basically reduced this terrain feature to a lighting feature. Now, that's another thing, is that each sector has its own light level, and you can see this down in the, well, yeah, it's not showing us. You have to, if you can see the tiny, tiny little text down in the bottom middle here, it's got a light level of 128, and we can change that on the fly too. We can turn that all the way up to 255. We can turn it all the way down to 0 and have a completely dark room. And so the way that they created this little feature that you're seeing when you start up map 1 here is they created that geo. You know, they created these sectors that are of the cool little pointy shape, and they made each of those. They drew out their line defs. And then they gave them a different light level and a different floor height, but kept the ceiling height the same. And then they assigned a texture to the side here. I'll go into a little more detail about, like, because floor and ceiling textures really are just as simple as, like, pick a texture for floor or ceiling, whereas walls are a little more complex. Like, this is an example of this one line def here has both a section of wall above this boundary between these two sectors. It has a texture a different texture both above and below it. And actually, I might as well just jump into that too. So, like, it's I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, probably better to go into top-down view here to show this. So, yeah, so this line def here actually has 6 different texture slots. And we can see the 2 textures that this thing was using in the 3D preview just now. There's a front upper and a front lower, which just means if this line def is a boundary between 2 sectors rather than an impenetrable wall, like say this guy, like say these two, then you can have something, and the ceiling height. The ceiling height is such that you will see above the boundary between those 2 things. Like these guys, well, actually, yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to create a boundary zone here. Okay, so these are now 2 different sectors, and there's a line def connecting the 2 of them, but we can't actually see that. You know, we can see it on the floor when we look at the boundary, the outline of this sector. But yeah, so that's an example of, like, if we set this texture, if we set this line def to have a texture, we wouldn't actually see it. We would see it immediately if we changed the height of this, say, you know, if we did that. But we don't. So yeah, and then likewise, a line def can have both a front and a back. And I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah, okay. So this is an example. This is like a little cage, a little translucent cage that you can fire through but not move through. And oh, actually, this doesn't have a texture on the other side, but it does have. So if we look at this thing's line def. So yeah, this thing has the upper texture that's on the wall above it, and then it's got this middle texture. And actually, we can just go and let's see here. Yeah, we can just give this thing the same texture on its back middle. I guess they didn't texture this, figuring that the player would never actually be able to get in here. So that's why that looks the way it does. So line defs don't just have texture information about them; they also have just a whole general set of properties here. Let me switch back to the text chat here. All right, yeah, we've got some questions here. Let me try to field these before continuing. Some minor flickers in real time. Good. No, this is not for my Doom community texture project. That was a project that I started going, like, I guess around this time last year, and I got some really good responses for it. You can check that out, like sort of the current state of that. Whoops. On my website on vectorpoem/deck. But yeah, I started up a project called the Doom Engine Creators Kit last year and got some really good responses, and people submitted some really cool content. But I kind of realized after a little while that, like, probably the better way to fund a public domain resource pack to make new not copyright encumbered Doom stuff with is actually to crowdfund it. So that's something that I might do at some point down the road, or maybe once I'm a rich and famous and successful independent developer. But until then, that project is kind of on hiatus. Yeah. Oh yeah, the original Doom-Ed. Romero released the source code for Doom-Ed which was the original next step tool that Doom's levels were developed with, a couple of weeks ago, and that was really cool. It's mainly of historical interest. Like, Slade is definitely a nice modern editor, and I'm assuming that the user experience of Doom-Ed is not as good as Doom Builder or Slade, but it is really cool, and it was awesome of him to have released that. And he released a bunch of other, like, unused artwork and old versions of maps and stuff like that. Okay, so I think that about covers it. Let's jump back in. So we were looking at the properties for a line def, and we've got this thing here flagged. You can see we can see that we were looking at the line def for this thing right here, which was the barrier that was keeping this imp in its little cage. And so we can kind of see what we already knew about it. If you've played this level, it's impassable, but it doesn't block monsters. Yeah, okay, so I think impassable overrides blocks monsters. Anyway, there's some flags that you can set to things. And then there's a special which actually gets into, like, this is basically how you script stuff in vanilla Doom. You can make any given line def a teleporter. Like, if something crosses it, it will teleport. You can make it change the light level in a sector. You can make it a lift, and that's actually how doors are done. Doors are sort of special sectors that are set with the same floor and ceiling height initially. Then we can see the texture assignments here for both the front and the back side. Yeah, so I think that's about all there is to this. And yeah, Slade gives you a nice, like, sort of checkbox view here where you can sort of at a glance, like, see what the properties for a line def are, and you could be like, I want that to block monsters and whatever. So anyway, that's a line def's properties. Things also have properties. They have a direction facing here, which is only really relevant for certain kinds of actors, like mainly monsters and like player spawn points here. So like these are those troopers that are around the corner in that first hallway, and I can select them, I can move them around. I can actually change their facing. Slade has a really cool feature for retargeting. They might have copied it from Doom Builder, but who cares? It's a good feature. You can hold down the D key while you've got objects selected, and it will actually face them towards something. So this is useful if you just like throw down a bunch of monsters in a room and you want them all to kind of like face the same direction or face like where the player is going to be. You can do that really easily. It's super cool. But yeah, so here's like a weapon pickup. So we can go into a thing's properties and edit those just like we can a line def. A thing always has flags for whether it shows up in easy, medium, or hard skill, or whether it's multiplayer only, I guess. You can set the direction property kind of manually like this, but it's usually more fun to do it the other way. And so yeah, like a lot of things don't necessarily have, I guess, let's see. Does this guy have any more properties? Oh yeah, the ambush flag, which basically just means that a monster won't hear you, like that the monster is deaf basically, and it won't come after you until it sees you. So yeah, but that's really about it. Like monsters really just kind of have a position and a facing and a few flags that determine when they show up, and like one flag that determines its behavior. So yeah, that's all pretty simple and stuff. I was going to walk through, I think like a practical sort of a more practical exercise here would be to add a new feature to this very familiar map so you can kind of see what that's like. And so yeah, I'm going to add a little hallway that connects that connects the starting area of map 1 basically to the little outdoor area that you can get to further into the level. So I'm actually just, so a sector, pretty crucially, a sector doesn't have to be convex, i.e., well, you know, look that up on some Wikipedia or game development tutorial or something. Convex means not concave, which means, you know, that it's got concavities. I don't know. Like you can anyway, you can kind of just doodle whatever shape you want here, so long as it is a closed polygon here. So yeah, we're back here now, and our new hallway that we've created looks like this. And that's kind of useful. And actually, let's just jump in here. I think I've got GZ Doom set up here. Okay, yeah, I've told it where GZ Doom is. I've set it to no monsters just for testing here. And now let's boot up GZ Doom here. So yeah, we can see our funky, weird texture changes that we've done already. And I made it so that I couldn't get back up here without... but yeah, here's our newly created hallway. And here's the area it opens up to. And it considers that... Okay, right, this is a secret area. But yeah, like it's drawing this weird, like you can kind of see through into the void here, and that's because back in the level editor here, we have not given it upper and lower textures. And it needs those, and like most editors will show you a really grody looking temporary texture sort of thing if you've messed that up. Let me switch back to the chat here real quick just to see if there's... Yeah, no path nodes. Doom's AIs are very simple. They just kind of, you know, use vector math to just kind of go towards the player and or wander around and fire and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a few, yeah, so like there is no real AI scripting in Doom per se. I'll show you some stuff in a little bit that will make it, that'll make it clear, like, you know, when you play something like an ambush in Doom, like how people are actually doing that. But for the time being, let's finish up this little feature that we were building here. So one of the things that I don't like about this thing right now is that it's a dead drop, and it's also just got kind of a gross, like, you know, I want to make this feel a little different. So I'm gonna go into full bright mode here, and I'm gonna raise the ceiling. And I want it to be like a smooth step down thing. I want it to like smoothly transition down so that the player can go back and forth between this area. I'm also going to let's see, is this the player 1 start? Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna set player 1 like facing out in this direction. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create some new line defs here that are going to subdivide this sector. And Slade is very polite and smart about it, and it just says when you create a line def that bisects a sector, then just create a whole new sector. And this is going to be some pretty cruddy sector work. You'll notice that like I'm taking care to redraw sectors sometimes, and that's just because I want the tick mark facing in the direction that visible surfaces will actually be. That is really just my own kind of like, you know, my own being fastidious and careful and stuff. You don't have to do that. Like the side that you can give, like if we created, and that's because I want to be able to, like when I'm creating these stair surfaces and stuff, I just want to be able to do. We're also going to find out. See, I wasn't really, so I didn't really know how short we were going to come up with our placement here. Actually, I'm going to steal this texture from this to put on all of these steps just because it looks way better. I think I'm also, while I'm at it, while I'm being fancy, I think I'm also going to make some of these sectors like sky facing, and that gives us, see, let me turn gravity back on, and then I'm going to like use the little keyboard shortcuts for lighting up these sectors here, and I'm going to make these sectors that are open to the sky have a brighter light level because it makes sense, you know, they're skylights. And it also looks bad that it's just like a flat polygon just flush with the sky with no thickness. So I'm going to raise this up here, put a little texture on here, do that with this guy. So yeah, and you can do that all pretty, like, as you can tell, I definitely prefer to work in the 3D view most of the time, just because it's way easier to see what you're doing there, and the WYSIWYG, the immediate feedback is really nice. You know, that's something that I'm just like a sucker for. So so yeah, because we came up short here, I'm gonna just do kind of a common sector trick that is consistent with some of the other sort of just style things that are being done in this level, and create extra sectors for some steps here. Actually, I don't want to do it that way. And this is how I am going to ease the transition down here. So let's see if we do this, and then we do this, and then let's do like one more. I don't know, this might end up being pretty funky sector work, but who cares? Dude, okay. And then we'll do this as well. I don't know, I'm just getting fancy here, but as you can see, it is pretty fun to and easy to create this kind of geometry. Like with a very little effort, we've added a brand new feature to the level, and then let's jump into game here and run through it again. Now we've got something that this lighting change is a little garish, but whoa! And I guess all of those sectors were marked as secret. That's just something. Yeah, we haven't talked about sector properties yet, but yeah, ZDoom plays its own little special noise here when you discover a secret sector. But yeah, so yeah, that's a whole new little feature here. And yeah, so we can very easily, like, you know, the game boots up our map more or less instantly, which is cool. So you just got really quick turnaround times here, which is probably one of the most important things to me as a designer working nowadays. On other games I worked on, you know, you had like really long turnaround times where you'd have to wait for a level to compile or cook or whatever, and there's none of that with this. It's just pure speed. So yeah, like, let's fix that thing that we saw here. Let me select all of these new sectors that I created out of. So the reason that secret sound was playing was because, let's go into the properties for this sector here. Now this outdoor area is actually a secret thing. Like, you have to do some stuff further into map 1 here. And let's see, where is it? What am I missing here? Huh? Is this for real? Okay, well, weird. Properties. Something's kind of messed up with this view of it because it's saying that this sector's special behavior number is 0, and it's not, and it's getting it right in the special here. In this panel off to the side, you know, we're seeing like the basic properties of the sector. We're seeing you know, we're seeing its floor height, its ceiling height, its tag, which we'll get to in a bit, its light level, the floor and ceiling texture, and then its special, which is, yeah, I don't know why it's not displaying this correctly. That's either a bug with Slade or a bug with my config. I don't know. So yeah, like, and when we created those new line defs, it basically, they adopted all of the properties of the sector that we were subdividing, which in this case was, you know, it had a grass floor and a sky ceiling, which is good, and it was the right height and light level, but it also had that secret tag. So let's go in here, and I guess one way we could do this is we could just mark, yeah, see, this gets into the finer points here. We could just mark this thing as, and now it's like, now it's using some goofy unknown value here. No, don't damage or anything. Okay, this is all goofed up somehow, I think. Can I? Okay, yeah, I think that works. Okay, yeah, so that's normal. Whereas if we keep this sector secret and we keep this sector secret, then, you know, then it will still trigger, although that's bad because then that will count as 2 secrets. So anyway, I don't want to get into the minutia of proper secret sector tagging, because I kind of want to add some interactivity. Actually, there's one more thing that I want to show you how to do. So just to be clear, if you're new to Doom editing, if I wanted to create like a little platform right in the middle of this thing, I would just create a sector like this. I would just create some new line defs like this, and then I can just raise up its floor height. And then I give it this. And let's say actually that we want to move our shotgun pickup to that. And then yeah, we've got a little platform with a shotgun on it. Put the little texture on it. So yeah, and that's cool and fun. Likewise, if we wanted to create a solid pillar, just like, you know, something that doesn't have a floor or a ceiling. Now we could take this sector here and raise it up so that its floor height is flush with its ceiling height, but there's a simpler way to do it that doesn't require us to just create a new sector here. We can actually select this new sector we created and then delete it. And as you can see, it's now black, which means that it is like solid positive space. And these line defs are still here, but now they only have one side, and they reach all the way up to the thing, because not only can sectors have all kinds of like twists and turns and polygon edges, they can also just have holes cut in them. And so this thing, you know, we can see in just the glowing outline of this sector that it has 2 holes cut into it, as well as some funky edges, one of which houses another sector, this little platform we created, and then the other one is just like positive space that we can give a texture to, like so. And so yeah, that's how we create just like a solid feature like that. So hopefully now you're starting to get like the idea of, you know, how you make a lot of basic geometry stuff in the Doom engine. So yeah, one more thing, just because it's near and dear to my heart. You know, you come in here and you're looking at this and you're like, well, this feature, you know, maybe this is useful in a firefight or something, but it looks just kind of weird and plain, so what should we do with that? Well, one thing we can do is we can give it some lighting. And lighting in the Doom engine, like, as you saw, like, a sector can have a single light value. There's no such thing as like real-time shadows or light maps or anything like that in Doom. There really is just the sector light value. But we can still create some cool effects here. And so when you see, one of the things that we can do here is we can create a new sector, a new sector that only exists to create this illusion of lighting here. So I've traced out like this sort of outline. This is actually probably pretty bad. Because you're doing this by hand, you have to be kind of, you know, it takes some technique. You have to like, you know, getting the right sort of illusion. You know, you have to like sort of study the way that it would really work and all that. So then we can like take this new sector we've created here and just create a little thing, and then that starts to like, I guess I've chosen, by laying down that sector in a particular way, I guess I've chosen that our light source is over, that the sun is over somewhere over there. But of course, when you start doing this, you immediately realize that like, oh, well, gee, I guess I have to like, probably this big building, whatever this is part of, would also want to like cast a shadow, and then you're into like, chopping up your sectors kind of in this fine grain way. And the good news is that like you can fudge a lot of this stuff. Like you can really get away with, like if I wanted to, so yeah, like even this right here, like feels like, oh yeah, that building's, this structure here is casting a shadow. I don't know why it's not doing it with that. So you have to be careful about it, but it is really good. And that's something that if you do start Doom level editing, and maybe like you create a basic room and like start getting some stuff, you string some rooms together and all that. And your room, and it still feels really basic. I would strongly urge you to just like mock in lighting early. Like don't get all fiddly with it necessarily early on, but be thinking about whether you want a room to be light or dark, or whether you want it to have a feature in it that like sort of creates this high contrast kind of thing, because that really does like give even a very basic area character. Like this room at the end of the day is pretty basic. Like it's a hallway, it's a little nook, it's a hallway beyond, and then it's it's got this cool stair feature and then 2 pillars. But the thing that really makes it is the fact that it's also got different lighting levels. It feels like it has a point of emphasis that draws you forward. You're like, wow, I really want to go down this hallway because this hallway is brightly lit up, whereas the area that I'm starting from is dark, and I just want to, it's very obvious that you want to move ahead. So lighting, use it. And then you can always go through later, like, I don't know, there's really, because you can create like very large numbers of sectors, you really can just, get really out of hand with it and like create sort of a gradient-like effect where you create things that have like kind of intermediate levels of brightness, but that starts getting into hyper detailing stuff, which becomes, aesthetically unpalatable, let's say. So yeah, that's a lot of the basics. Let me jump back over to the chat here. Yeah. Okay, doesn't seem like there's any... So yeah, let's make something interactive happen. Obviously we can place down monsters, and because Doom is Doom, you've already got some gameplay just with some monsters running around. You put down a weapon pickup, and it's like, okay, cool, I'm blasting imps with the shotgun. That's good old meat and potatoes Doom gameplay. But what if we wanted to do something like, say, like this shotgun here? Like if I just jump into the level here, I will not be able to pick this up because the player can't jump or mantle in Doom, and so you're just going to be like looking at that, at that thing and being like, man, how do I get that shotgun pickup? So let's do something here to make that into its own little bit of pseudo gameplay. I'm going to steal this texture just because it's perfect. Oh, okay. So this is a quirk here. So I created this sector, and I wasn't thinking about like where I was placing it. And you'll notice that the texture alignment on this sector. Actually, let's talk about texture alignment on walls. So you cannot align textures on floors and ceilings. So the way that I would align these textures is either create an alternate version of this texture in the WAD that has it shifted by 50% of its length, and by 50% of its width and height, which is sort of wasteful and weird, or I can or I can just actually move the sector, and I'm not doing this very well. Yeah, I can move the sector and then it lines up properly. There are definitely like ZDoom and so forth definitely does give you more sophisticated ways of doing this so that you don't always have to do that. But if you're editing vanilla Doom, then you do have to contend with that. It's usually not that big of a deal because like each floor and ceiling flat texture is like 64 by 64 and shifting something over by 64, but it is something that you have to think about. Walls, on the other hand, definitely do have a texture alignment, and I can alter that in real time by, actually, I guess numpad is the key for it. I think I can also, let's see, is there an interactive way I can do this? Maybe not. yeah, sorry, I'm actually front side. Yeah, so under the hood, there are just these X and Y offset numbers that control the texture's alignment. But yeah, it's much easier and more interesting to just sort of like dynamically change that so that you can like see like, okay, cool, that looks like it's in alignment. That does not look like it's in alignment. And all this kind of stuff. You can turn the highlighting on and off so you're not looking at the little highlight effect seam. And yeah, good texture alignment is important and good to do if you're trying to create a polished thingy. So anyway, let's go back to our little platform here. I want to make, I'm declaring my intent here, I want to make a little switch on the side of this thing that I can filter by switches in the little texture view here, and I am going to create a little switch thingy here. This might, I may have to, whoops. No. Yeah, this is a little goofy. So, so because this this texture only has a particular height, yeah, you know, I don't like that. So I'm actually I'm gonna move this guy down and just eat the fact that this texture doesn't line up exactly with its neighbors on the different faces, which is really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. So now I've created a switch here, but right now it's just a texture. And I want to, so anytime, let's look at an existing thing here, like there's this, so yeah, you remember this room from map 1, like this room here where you hit this switch and then that door opens and then you hit that switch and then these platforms lower down to ground level or vice versa, I forget. That's done. We can sort of like see what's going on there when we hover over this line def with the switch on it, and it points an arrow to a sector and to kind of show like, okay, this line def and this sector are associated. And so when you do something to this sector, to this line def, then something will happen to this sector. And when we open this thing up, when we click on it, we can see it's special. 103 S1 door stay open. 103 is just like an internal engine index. Whereas S1 means a switch that only works once, and then door stay open is the sort of like what happens to my sector, to the sector that I am assigned. And then the actual sector assignment here is on, again, this is on the line def, it's got a sector tag of 4. And so then no other thing in the map, and then we go over to this sector here and it has a tag. And so every sector can have a tag and every line def can have a tag, and that is how you create these relationships between these things. So yeah, so like when I look at this line def right here, it's like, okay, door 1 stay open, and this thing, you know, this sector, which appears to be a wall in the 3D view, is actually a sector that has the same floor and ceiling height, and it's actually just acting as the barrier between these two. And door stay open does a whole custom little thing where I think we can sort of pry this up here by doing this. Right, you have to commit. You have to hit a little check mark to change the thing that way. And so yeah, like they have, in order to create the illusion that this thing is a door, kind of, they textured the sides of this sector with the little door track thing, and the ceiling of it with the underside of a door texture. And so yeah, when we're raising and lowering this guy here, and so doors are basically special sectors that have the same floor and ceiling height. They're the door, the visible door surface line def of them has a door open special, and then when that thing is activated, it's basically like, okay, I should raise my ceiling height up until I am like just below the ceiling height of the lowest adjacent sector. So that's a little bit of that's probably one of the more complicated line special types, just because, you know, doors are like a thing that you really want to do a lot in a Doom level often. So yeah, that's how that works. So now back here, that gives us a pretty clear idea of what we want to do with this. We can go over to our sector here, and we can say, I'm not sure what I just did there. Sector new tag. Okay, I guess the tag 1 is available because I don't see any line defs pointing to it. Okay, so this sector that comprises our platform with the shotgun on it now has a sector tag of 1. And now we're going to go into the line def here and say, okay, your sector tag is 1. So now we see, yeah, we see that, and then we also want to change its special. And we've got a whole, this is actually just kind of like the meat of vanilla Doom Engine scripting here. We've got things, and they're organized into groups. We can do things like, we can only, like, I guess we could give this any value, but the only ones that will work in this context are switches, because that is a line def, like, switch thing. The other things like walk, like WR and W1 are walk repeatable and walk once, which makes sense when you have something like a teleporter here. Because like it's like walk repeatable. It's like every time you step across this line def, it will teleport to the tagged sector. So yeah, I think with this we want to control the floor of this thing. We want to move it down, and we want to do switch one floor to highest adjacent floor. I think this is what we want here. Are you going to do that for us? Yes, I think it is. All right, so cool. And so yeah, I think that should work. I'm actually a little rusty on my Doom editing here, so this might not work the first time. All right, so we got our little secret here, and then we're like, I want that shotgun, and then we hit up, and I didn't do something correctly. Did I just not apply those changes? No, I did not. 102. All right, just because I remembered the thing. Wow, yeah, that really gets you with the whole doesn't automatically commit thing. Okay, yeah, now, yeah, like, we know that we've got it right when we hover over the line def, the sector pulses green here, so that's cool. So yeah, let's jump back in here. And this should work. And there it is. So yeah, so that's a little bit of scripting. Let's jump in. Let's do something just a little. Let's do one more thing that's a little more complicated, and then I think we'll be done. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if this is too ambitious. So I want to create an ambush. Okay. I want to create. I'm gonna make it so that when I walk out into here, when I walk out into this area, some imps teleport in, right? So first of all, anytime you see an ambush in a Doom level, it's actually just a weird little room that is joined to part of the playable space. And that has okay, yeah. So what we've got here is like a tiny little 1-unit gap, like a little air tube into a room that the player will never visit. And then we put monsters inside of that. We can put just whatever guys we want in here. Monsters. Put some imps down. Alright, so cool. We've got some imps. And alright, I am a little bit rusty with this. And then we're going to create a weird thing. We're going to create a line def in the middle of this room that is actually a teleporter. So let's go into this and sector tag. Let's create a new sector tag. No, we don't want that. Okay, I don't even know what it's doing here. I want to create a unique sector tag, which I can then give to memory of a goldfish here. All right, we're gonna give our line def here sector tag 55, and then we're gonna go here and give this thing 55. So now this guy is associated with this, but we need to give it a value. Teleports, walk repeatable teleport. Monsters only in this case doesn't matter because the player will never get into that room. So we'll do this. Okay, and so now, I keep forgetting to save that, to apply that junk. That's definitely a usability hurdle. Okay, so now we've got this thing that's like, hey, teleport to this sector. In order for, like, we need to tell, in the case of teleporting specifically though, we actually need to tell it where in the sector to teleport, because it's not just going to like guess a location. And so we put down a special actor that you don't actually see in game called a teleporter destination. And here the facing is important because it means that whenever an imp hits this line def right here, it's going to teleport to this sector, and it's going to teleport to one of the teleport destinations in this sector. And it's going to, and the monster is going to have that facing when they emerge from the teleporter. So yeah, right now I think this should all work. There will be one problem that we will probably see here. Let's tell it not to do no monsters. Okay. And yeah, okay, so there's our monsters. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm a total fool. I left out a very important. All right, so shooting right there aggroed. Turn down the volume, sound effects volume here a little. So shooting those guys up at the beginning, like when I walked out here initially, they didn't teleport in, and that's just because those monsters hadn't seen me yet, which makes sense. So we can do one of two things here, actually. We could, yeah, I guess they can't see the player through here. Let me jump in, let me jump in one more time to reset the level. Okay, so they only aggro when they hear us, which means that they don't have a line of sight through this thin tube, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. All right, so let's move these guys back a little bit. And now let's, in order to make this like a truly player-triggered trap, let's do this. Let's create a sector in this room here that is a little barrier here, right? And it actually doesn't, it really doesn't matter what texture it has, but, and so this is tall, so tall that the imps, even if they are aggro and trying to move towards this teleporter line def here, cannot. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the second moving part to this, to our little ambush trap here, and create this, and now we're gonna go over here and tag this. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. We're going to, let's see, floors, move down, and we're actually going to use the exact same walk. Let's see, walk once floor, just adjacent floor. Okay, cool. Do it. And so yeah, now we've created a link between this, and so that means that whenever the player walks across this thing, it's going to lower this sector's floor to the point that these imps can now cross this line, and that gives us kind of a timed that gives us that sort of specifically cued ambush kind of thing. Of course, we're still not seeing them because we haven't aggroed them yet, and that's actually just something that you kind of have to like be clever about as a level designer. It's like if you give the player combat early on, yeah, if you were listening closely, like we actually heard the imp aggro noise like back in the other room, and so, well, I'll be darned, I don't actually know. Oh right, I had already walked across here to lower it, so let me open this level once more just to show. Alright, so I fight these guys, fight. Okay, and now we come out here, and now they start teleporting in. So that's kind of how you script a Doom ambush in a very basic way. There's a lot more things you can do to make that like polished and reliable. It's very much down to the vagaries of like how quickly monsters move and all that sort of stuff. So, if you look at like a level that's made by a very experienced and skilled designer, you can kind of see how they've like tightened that stuff up, such that when a monster is supposed to hit a teleporter, they hit it more or less immediately and all that. So this is I'm kind of doing it fast and sloppy and out of practice and etc. So yeah, I think that's just about the most ambitious thing that we've got. Let me go back to the chat here for some questions. Yes, I am totally going to archive this. I always archive my streams. The chat is kind of messing with Slade. Partially visible and shaking over Slade. Oh, that must be some sort of annoying X/open broadcaster software issue. That's a bummer. Cool. One of those tubes set up in the original map 1 layout near the exit. Yes. Yes, that's right. Yeah. There's a little sound pipe here. And yeah, I guess that's so that this, so the sound will travel. Like, this is a secret door right here, and I guess they wanted these monsters to be aggro as soon as you opened up the secret door here. Yeah, it's only in medium and hard skill. So yeah, yeah, that's an example of using a little sound pipe, which is cool. Yeah, so I think that's just about, like, those are really kind of the basics of Doom level editing, I would say. And yeah, there's a lot more complicated stuff you can do with it. One of the glorious things about Doom editing is that the source format is that you can edit, that you can look at it in an editor and edit, and but all is the same thing that ships in the WAD. So like just in the resource file that Doom shipped with, you've got all of these maps that just kind of serve as a textbook for how to do all manner of things. And this, I think this was actually tremendously important back in the day for Doom, just because, once level editors became available, which was really only like, 6 months after Doom 1 was released, you could just kind of crack everything open. You could crack open the work that the game's designers had done and just learn from it. You could see every little like nuance of how they had done stuff. And in later games, even like Quake 1, there were these, like the map files were these compiled files that you had to like extract from a thing, and then like, you couldn't do anything with the compiled map file that shipped, so you actually needed the map source, which Romero later released, because of their educational value and stuff. But I think it's a huge advantage of the Doom engine is that you can really kind of learn a lot about level design just by going to your favorite maps or like seeing a cool trick in a map and then wondering, hey, how did they do that? And then just opening it up in the editor and seeing like, yep, that's exactly how they did that. And it exposes you to like, okay, well, here's how their sectoring work was, here's, how they divided things up to light it and all that. And I think that's tremendously useful. So my whole spiel that I'll give from time to time, and is kind of one of the big reasons that I started that Doom engine, that public domain Doom engine resource file that I still want to do someday, is that I think the Doom engine is like still really valuable because it's a very quick turnaround, fast iteration level design tool that you can use to make a pretty surprising array of spaces. Like Wolfenstein 3D was its previous game, and those levels really were just kind of like Pac-Man mazes. They had a single floor and ceiling height, and you couldn't do lighting, and it was very limited in a lot of ways. People still did cool stuff with it, but whereas here it's like, yeah, look, I've created this huge open space with like these platforms and like big lifts, and this thing is a crushing ceiling. Like this room is just in map 6 is just ridiculously stacked, and then this is like a dark space with like that's kind of claustrophobic and all that. So you can really do a lot with like atmosphere and mood, and I think that extends not just to like Doom's core like shooter gameplay, but I think like you can make some pretty interesting spaces albeit sort of lo-fi retro FPS ones, in this engine, and I think that's really valuable. I think a lot of the people, people who got into making games via something like Game Maker or Twine, the Doom engine is definitely a more cantankerous, weird beast than those two, but not significantly more so. And like I would give somebody who didn't know anything about game development, but really really wanted to make 3D spaces, I would probably point them at the Doom engine if they were amenable to that, just because you can make stuff so quickly, and you can modify stuff really quickly. You can be like, I'm going to make this thing taller. I'm going to raise this. I'm going to make this thing, well, and you got to know some of the tricks, but the total amount of tricks that you need to worry about compared to getting good results in, say, the Quake engine or certainly any modern engine is, just really dramatically different. So I think that speed of iteration and simplicity is super valuable, and I think that there are still a lot of great games that people could make with the Doom engine, and so that's why I wanted to make that public domain resource file, because I was like, yeah, right now it's really easy. If you want to make something that's just like a mod for Doom or something with very Doom-like gameplay, you're set. Just download Doom and an editor, and you can just make that. Whereas if you want to make something that's like, like an exploration game, or like something that's kind of more puzzly. Like building new types of game mechanics into Doom is a little harder, and that's kind of a discussion for another time. But as far as just building spaces and making worlds, which I think does have inherent value, Doom is really valuable and unique. And I think there's a reason that it has stuck around, and people continue to release so many levels for it and do so many different things with it. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel on why Doom is awesome and important. Yeah, let me see if there's any more questions here. Yeah, just some text stuff. Yeah, you can make like really big spaces, and you don't have to worry about detail counts. Like you can put like 100 monsters on the screen if you want. You can make like pretty detailed geometry, like as detailed as you really want to be making in this kind of an engine, really. So yeah, I think that's about all I've got here. But yeah, again, Slade is the name of the level editing tool that I was using here. I use it just because I'm running Linux here, and it runs on Linux, Mac, and Windows. If you're running Windows, Doom Builder is a good option. You can find out, like, as far as just like a good resource for finding out more stuff, like I guess people edit levels on, there's level editing forums on the Doom on doomworld.com, and then the Doom wiki has like just some technical explanations of stuff. Like, yeah, this is a weird little nuance of how Doom works, and there's a nice wiki page about it with a lot of technical info. So yeah, if you are feeling inspired, then go ahead and jump right in and make a Doom level, and post it on a forum somewhere and see what people think. The main places that I look at are, like Doom World does regular review roundups. Like if you publish your map to the id Games archive by uploading it to the new stuff folder, then it will get reviewed on Doom World. Maybe eventually. I'm sure the queue is like months long or something. But yeah, people are just, new files coming in all the time. Just, yeah, this thing was released last month, and people are still making tons of stuff, and you can get feedback on it. And yeah, the community is pretty cool. Like, there are some very knowledgeable and supportive people in the community. I don't know. I still feel like kind of an outsider in the Doom community to an extent, just because I'm doing my own weird stuff. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's Doom editing, and jump in and tell me what you think. Let's see. Do I have anything else for you here? No, I don't think so. If you've watched this far, then thank you very much. I am on Patreon. I have a Patreon account. The main thing that I'm doing is I'm working on my first independent game, and I'm building an open source tool to make that game with called Playski. And then at some point I will announce my game project. But yeah, I'm you can support me if you think the kind of stuff I'm doing is cool. Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for the questions and feedback. If you have any other questions, then hit me up in the comments or the chats or the Twitters or some such. But I think that's about it. So thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.